They didn't just misinform you about intelligence. They engineered your limits. Not because you're incapable, but because a mind that knows it can grow becomes impossible to control. Think about it for a second. Why is it that the moment someone believes they're not smart, they stop questioning, stop pushing, stop trying? Coincidence or design? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The idea that intelligence is fixed isn't just wrong. It's useful. Useful for anyone who benefits from you staying predictable, compliant, and easy to manage. And you bought into it. You watched someone grasp things faster than you and quietly decided, that's just not me. You saw effort as proof of weakness instead of strategy. You mistook speed for superiority and hesitation for limitation. But what if that entire framework is inverted? What if intelligence isn't something you have, but something you build, deliberately, strategically, almost ruthlessly? Because that's how it works in reality. Power was never handed to the most deserving. It was taken by the most aware, and your mind operates under the same principle. The moment you realize your thinking can be sharpened, trained like a blade, everything changes. You stop reacting and start calculating. You stop absorbing and start dissecting. You stop following and start seeing the structure behind the path. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because once you begin to see clearly, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability unsettles systems. So ask yourself, if intelligence were truly fixed, why would those at the top constantly invest in thinking better, learning faster, adapting quicker? They know something most people don't. Your mind isn't a limit, it's leverage. Right now, you're likely running on default settings, beliefs installed by school, reinforced by culture, and rarely questioned. Settings that reward obedience over insight, memorization over understanding, comfort over clarity. But defaults can be rewritten. And most people never do. They consume information without processing it. They repeat ideas without examining them. They follow paths without ever asking who designed them. That's not intelligence. That's programming. Real intelligence is something else entirely. It's clarity. The ability to see what others overlook. To read patterns before they become obvious. To understand people before they fully reveal themselves. It's quiet, precise, strategic, and it can be built starting now. So here's the shift. Stop asking, am I smart enough? Start asking, am I thinking clearly? Because that one question changes everything. Because once you choose clarity, you stop playing the game blindly. And when that happens, you don't just become smarter. You become difficult to control. Number one, here's the part nobody says out loud. The belief that your intelligence is fixed isn't just wrong, it's convenient. Convenient for a world that benefits from men who doubt their own capacity. Because the moment you assume you've reached your limit, you stop pushing, you stop questioning, you stop becoming, and that's when you become easy to predict, easy to guide, easy to replace. I've seen it happen in real time. A guy sits there, scrolling, watching other men move faster, think sharper, speak with certainty, and instead of asking, what are they doing differently, he quietly tells himself, they're just built like that. That single sentence kills something inside him, not loudly, but slowly. It's subtle, comfortable, and deadly, because now he doesn't have to try. And that's the trap. You were taught to confuse natural talent with final form. To believe intelligence is something assigned at birth, like a number stamped on your forehead. But look closer at reality. Every man you respect, every man who moves with precision, who reads situations before they unfold, who stays calm while others react, he built that. Piece by piece. Through friction, through obsession, through refusing to stay the same. That's the part people hide. They show you the outcome, never the construction. Your mind isn't a sealed container. It's a system, and systems can be reprogrammed. But most men never touch the code. They run the default version their entire lives. School installs it, society maintains it, and comfort protects it. Default thinking creates average men. You consume content without dissecting it. You repeat opinions you never tested. You follow paths you never chose. And then you wonder why your thinking feels shallow, why you hesitate, why you second-guess yourself in moments that demand clarity. It's not lack of intelligence. It's lack of pressure. Because real thinking hurts. It creates friction. It forces you to sit with ideas that don't resolve quickly. And most people avoid that. They'd rather feel informed than actually understand. But men who develop real intelligence operate differently. They question what they hear. They challenge their own conclusions. They don't protect their ego. They dismantle it. They take an idea, break it apart, test it against reality, rebuild it stronger. That's where power starts. Not in knowing more, but in seeing better. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The moment you accept that your current level is just a starting point, not a ceiling, you lose your excuses. You can't blame genetics anymore. You can't hide behind, "That's just how I am." You either evolve, or you admit you chose not to. Most won't like that, because it puts the responsibility back on you. Your brain will resist this shift. It will try to pull you back into familiar patterns, tell you you've already figured enough out, that pushing further isn't necessary. That voice is comfort protecting itself, and comfort is the silent enemy of growth. Every time you sit with something difficult instead of escaping it, every time you force yourself to understand, instead of just moving on, you're rewiring how you think, literally. You're building a mind that doesn't panic under pressure, that doesn't fold in uncertainty, that doesn't rely on external validation to function. The difference is small on the surface, but massive in outcome. A weak mind says, "I'm not good at this." A trained mind says, "I'm not good at this yet." That single shift removes the ceiling. Because now you're not measuring yourself, you're building yourself. And once you cross that line mentally, there's no going back. You stop waiting for permission to improve. You stop comparing timelines. You stop looking for shortcuts that don't exist. You get to work. Quietly, consistently, without needing to prove it to anyone. Because at that point, you're no longer trying to appear intelligent. You're becoming it. Number 2, what they call education was never really about making you sharp. It was about making you useful. Quietly, efficiently, predictably useful. You sat there for years, didn't you? Told when to speak, when to stop, what to memorize, what to repeat, and you learned something far more dangerous than any subject on that curriculum. You learned how to comply, not how to think. I remember a guy I knew, top grades, perfect student, teachers loved him, but put him in a real situation, no structure, no clear instructions, no authority telling him what's right, and he froze, completely. Because all his intelligence was borrowed. It only worked inside the system that trained him. Outside of it, nothing. That's not intelligence, that's conditioning. You were rewarded for obedience so many times that you started confusing it with competence. Sit down, follow instructions, give them exactly what they want, and you win. Not because you understood anything deeply, but because you played the role correctly. And it worked. You passed, you moved forward, you got validated, but nobody told you the cost. You traded independent thinking for approval. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most men never recover from that trade. They carry it into adulthood, into business, into relationships, into every room they walk into. They scan for authority, for signals, for what's expected, and then they adjust themselves to fit, not consciously, automatically, like a script running in the background. That's why most men feel something's off, but can't explain it. Because deep down, they know they're not really choosing, they're following. Look around. You can see it everywhere. The same conversations, the same opinions, the same life trajectory repeated like a template. Wake up, work, consume, distract yourself, repeat. Not because it's the best path, but because it's the safest one. The least resistance, the least questioning. And the system loves that, because a man who doesn't question doesn't disrupt. A man who doesn't disrupt stays in place. But the moment you start thinking for yourself, really thinking, not just recycling what you heard online or what sounds intelligent, something shifts. You start noticing inconsistencies. You see the gap between what people say and what they actually do. You realize how much of the world runs on unspoken agreements, hidden incentives, quiet manipulation. And that's when you become a problem. Because now you're no longer predictable. You're no longer just reacting, you're analyzing. You're not just listening, you're reading between the lines. You stop respecting titles automatically. You start asking, why should I believe this? Who benefits from this? What's really going on here? Most people won't like that version of you, because it exposes the game they're still playing unconsciously. Degrees, titles, IQ scores. They look impressive on paper, but in reality, they mostly measure how well you followed instructions, how well you stayed inside the lines. That's not power. That's compliance dressed as intelligence. Real intelligence is something else entirely. It's the ability to see through the performance, to understand motives before they're spoken, to recognize when you're being guided, nudged, subtly controlled, and to step out of that frame entirely. And here's the part that separates men. Some hear this and feel uncomfortable, maybe even defensive. They'll go back to what's familiar, what's safe, what's socially approved. Others, they feel something different, a kind of clarity mixed with tension, because they realize they've been operating on autopilot for years. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Breaking the system doesn't mean you disappear from society or become some outsider. It means you stop letting it define you. You operate within it, but you're no longer shaped by it. You build your own standards, your own metrics, your own direction. That comes at a cost. You'll think differently, speak differently, move differently, and that makes people uncomfortable. You won't always be liked. You won't always be understood, but you'll be something far more valuable. Independent. And in a world full of men who need permission to think, that alone puts you in a different league. Number 3. At some point, if you're honest with yourself, you start to feel it, that quiet tension in the back of your mind when something doesn't quite add up, when the story you've been told your whole life feels a little too clean, a little too convenient. Most men ignore that feeling. They suppress it, distract themselves, go back to what's familiar. But the ones who don't, the ones who lean into that discomfort, they cross a line most people never even see. Because real intelligence begins the moment you stop trusting everything that feels comfortable. Not just what others tell you, what you tell yourself. There was a phase in my life where I realized most of my opinions weren't even mine. They sounded like me, sure, but they were stitched together from teachers, parents, media, conversations I never questioned. And once you see that, it hits hard. You start asking, if I didn't choose these beliefs, who did? And more importantly, why? That's where it gets dangerous. Because now nothing is off limits. Your values, your goals, the things you've defended for years, all of it gets dragged into the light and examined. Not gently, brutally. You start pulling at threads and suddenly entire parts of your identity don't hold up the way you thought they did. Most people won't go there, because it creates internal conflict. It forces you to admit you might be wrong about things you built your identity on, and the ego hates that. It would rather defend a lie than rebuild from truth. But if you don't question your beliefs, you don't own them. You're just carrying them. That's programming. Look at how people react when you challenge something they've always accepted. They don't analyze, they react. Emotionally, defensively. Not because they've thought deeply about it, but because it threatens the structure they've been standing on their entire life. And you've done it too. We all have. But here's the shift. Instead of asking, is this offensive? Is this uncomfortable? Does this go against what I've always believed? You start asking one question that cuts through everything. Is this actually true? Is this actually true? Not popular, not accepted, not repeated 1,000 times. True. And that question changes how you see everything. You start noticing patterns. Why people say what they say, why certain ideas get pushed harder than others, who benefits from you believing something without questioning it. You begin to see the incentives behind the words, the hidden structure behind the surface. And once you see it, you can't go back. Authority stops impressing you automatically. Titles lose their weight. You realize how often expertise is just confidence backed by repetition. People with credentials still have biases, still have blind spots, still have something to gain from you agreeing with them. So instead of blindly trusting, you evaluate. Calmly, quietly, without needing to prove anything. And that's what separates a man who thinks from one who follows. But let's make something clear. Questioning everything doesn't mean becoming cynical, angry, or trying to tear everything down just to feel superior. That's another trap. Real questioning is controlled, precise. You're not rejecting ideas, you're testing them. And that requires something most people don't have: emotional detachment. Because if your identity is tied to your beliefs, you'll defend them no matter what, even when they're wrong. But if you're willing to detach, to step back and say, if this is wrong, I'll change it, now you're operating differently. Now you're dangerous. Because you can evolve. Weak minds cling to certainty. They need to be right. Strong minds, they're willing to dismantle everything if it means seeing more clearly. Ask yourself, what do you believe right now that you've never actually tested? What opinions are you carrying just because they were repeated enough times? What would it take for you to admit you were wrong? If you can't answer that, you're not thinking. You're protecting. And there's a cost to that. Because the moment you start questioning deeply, you will lose something. Approval, agreement, comfort. People will look at you differently. Some will call you negative, difficult, even arrogant. Not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer easy to align with. And most people prefer agreement over truth. But if you've made it this far, you already know comfortable illusions come at a price. Clarity comes at a cost too. The difference is, one keeps you asleep, the other wakes you up. Number 4, there's a point where thinking stops being comfortable and starts becoming confrontational. Not with the world, but with yourself. That's where most men pull back. They don't lack intelligence, they lack the tolerance for mental friction. Because real growth doesn't come from answers, it comes from questions that don't resolve cleanly, questions that sit in your mind like a splinter, forcing you to revisit them again and again until something deeper shifts. I remember a conversation with a guy who was convinced he had life figured out. Strong opinions, clear positions, very certain. But the moment I asked him one simple question, what if the opposite of what you believe is also partially true? He went quiet. Not because he didn't hear me, but because his mind didn't have a script for that. And that silence, that discomfort, that's the exact space where intelligence either expands or collapses. Most people avoid that space completely. They stay inside mental echo chambers, reading what confirms them, surrounding themselves with people who mirror them, reinforcing the same beliefs until they feel like truth. But that's not intelligence, that's insulation. It feels strong, but it's fragile. The moment reality pushes back, it cracks. Because reality doesn't operate in clean binaries. It's not just right or wrong, strong or weak, good or bad. It's layered, contradictory, context-dependent. And if your thinking can't handle contradiction, it won't survive contact with the real world. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The questions that actually grow you are the ones you don't want to ask. What if your sense of morality is just conditioning? What if your goals aren't really yours, but inherited expectations you never challenged? What if the people you trust benefit from you staying exactly the way you are? Those questions hit differently. They don't just challenge ideas, they challenge identity. And your brain will resist that hard. It wants stability, coherence, certainty. It wants to protect the version of you that feels solid. But that solid version is often built on assumptions you never tested. And if you never test them, you stay limited by them. Now here's the shift most people never make. Instead of defending your position, you start exploring the opposite. Not to agree, but to understand. You deliberately expose yourself to perspectives that contradict you. and not in a superficial way, deeply. You try to see the world through that lens, understand the logic behind it, the fears driving it, the incentives shaping it. It's uncomfortable, because now you're holding two conflicting ideas at the same time, and your mind wants to resolve it quickly, pick a side, restore certainty. But if you resist that urge, if you stay in that tension a little longer, something changes. You start seeing patterns. You realize that both sides often contain fragments of truth and blind spots. You begin to understand that most people aren't wrong because they're stupid, they're incomplete. They're reacting to part of reality, not the whole of it. And suddenly, you're no longer inside the argument. You're above it. While everyone else is fighting over positions, you're seeing structure. You're recognizing how context changes outcomes, how the same action can produce opposite results depending on timing, environment, intent. That's where real leverage comes from. Because now you're not rigid, you're adaptive. You don't need certainty to function. You operate with awareness, and that makes you unpredictable. Most men need clear answers to feel in control. You don't. You're comfortable in complexity. You can move without having everything resolved, and that alone puts you in a different category. But here's the part that separates the few from everyone else: synthesis. Anyone can collect information. Some can even understand opposing views. But very few can take contradictions, tension, complexity, and turn it into something coherent. A framework, a way of seeing that actually reflects reality instead of simplifying it. That's the highest level of thinking. Not knowing more, but connecting more. Seeing how things interact, how patterns repeat across different areas, how human behavior, power, and decision-making follow underlying principles that don't change, even when the surface does. But you only get there if you stay in the discomfort long enough. Most people don't. They retreat the moment thinking gets difficult. They go back to certainty, to familiar narratives, to easy conclusions. And that's why they stay average, because they never push their mind past its current limits. If you want to evolve beyond that, you don't look for easier questions. You look for harder ones. And then you sit with them until your thinking breaks and rebuilds stronger. Number 5. Most men don't realize they've already lost the fight before they even start thinking, not because they're not capable, but because their attention has been quietly dismantled. Not taken all at once, that would be obvious, but fragmented piece by piece until they can't hold a single thought long enough to develop it. And the worst part, it feels normal. Look at your own behavior for a second. You sit down to focus, maybe to read, maybe to think something through, and within minutes your hand reaches for your phone without you even deciding to do it. A notification, a message, a quick scroll, and just like that the thought is gone. Not finished, interrupted, and you repeat that cycle all day. That's not distraction. That's conditioning. I knew a guy who couldn't sit in silence for more than 5 minutes. No music, no screen, nothing. He'd start tapping his fingers, shifting in his seat, reaching for something, anything, not because he was weak, but because his brain had been trained to avoid stillness. And without stillness, there's no depth, only noise. You've been told intelligence is about consuming more, learning more, staying updated. But nobody tells you that without sustained attention, all that input is useless. You're not thinking, you're collecting fragments. And fragments don't build clarity. They build confusion. Because real thinking requires continuity. It requires you to stay with an idea long enough for it to unfold, to challenge it, to turn it around in your mind until something clicks. But if your attention resets every few minutes, you never reach that point. You stay at the surface, moving fast, feeling busy, but never actually understanding anything deeply. And that creates a dangerous illusion. You feel informed, but you're not sharp. You recognize concepts, but you can't apply them. You talk about ideas, but you haven't internalized them. It's shallow competence, and in the real world, that gets exposed quickly. Now here's what most people don't want to hear. Your attention is being competed for aggressively. Every app, every platform, every notification is engineered to pull you back in, to keep you stimulated, reactive, dependent. not because they care about your growth, but because your attention is valuable. And the more scattered it is, the easier you are to control. Because a fragmented mind can't think strategically. It can't see patterns. It can't hold complexity. It reacts instead of analyzing. It follows instead of deciding. That's why focus is power. Not in the abstract sense, in a very real, practical way. The man who can sit with a problem for hours, uninterrupted, thinking deeply, connecting ideas, seeing what others miss, he operates on a completely different level. While everyone else is distracted, he's building understanding. While they're reacting, he's positioning. And that gap compounds. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The moment you remove distraction, your brain resists. Hard. You'll feel restless, bored, almost irritated. Thoughts you've been avoiding will surface. Questions you don't have answers for will stay in front of you, and your instinct will be to escape. That discomfort is the threshold. Most men never cross it. They go back to noise, back to stimulation, back to the easy dopamine hits that keep them occupied but never evolving. And over time, their ability to focus degrades even further until deep thinking feels almost impossible. But if you push through that, if you sit with it, without reaching for a screen, without escaping, something shifts. Your thoughts start to stabilize. You begin to see connections. Ideas that felt complex start making sense. You're no longer reacting to information, you're shaping it. That's the difference between a distracted mind and a dangerous one. And understand this clearly. Every time you break your focus, you're not just losing a moment, you're losing depth. It takes time for your mind to settle into real concentration. If you keep interrupting that process, you stay trapped at the surface permanently. So the question isn't whether you're intelligent. It's whether your environment allows you to use it. Because in a world where everyone is divided, overstimulated, constantly pulled in 10 directions, the man who can concentrate without interruption doesn't just have an advantage. He has leverage. Number 6. Most men think knowledge alone will make them powerful. It won't. You can read endlessly, memorize concepts, quote ideas, sound sharp in conversation, and still get played, disrespected, overlooked. Because the real game isn't built on information, it's built on people. And if you don't understand people, you're walking blind through a system that runs on hidden motives. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A guy walks into a room, technically competent, well-informed, confident in what he knows, but within minutes, someone with less knowledge, but sharper awareness, controls the dynamic. He shifts the tone, reads the room, adjusts his behavior, positions himself without saying much, and suddenly he's the one everyone gravitates toward. Not because he knows more, but because he understands more. That's the difference. Facts don't move the world. People do. And people are driven by things they rarely admit: fear, desire, ego, insecurity, status, validation. Once you see that clearly, behavior stops being random. It becomes predictable, not perfectly, but enough for you to stop being surprised, stop being caught off guard, stop putting yourself in positions where you get used. But to get there, you have to change how you observe. Most men listen to words. That's surface level. Words are curated, filtered, controlled. What you need to watch is everything around the words. What someone avoids, where they hesitate, how their tone shifts under pressure, what they emphasize when they're trying to impress, what they hide when they feel exposed. I remember a situation where someone kept talking about loyalty, repeating it, almost forcing the idea into every conversation. On the surface, it sounded solid, but the more he said it, the more it felt off. And sure enough, the first time it actually mattered, he folded. Because people often signal what they lack, not what they have. That's the level you need to operate on. You stop taking things at face value. You start asking quiet questions in your head. What does this person want from me? What are they trying to gain? What are they afraid of losing? How would they act if there were no consequences? Not out of paranoia, out of precision. Because when you understand someone's incentives, you understand their next move. And once you can anticipate behavior, you stop reacting. You start positioning. This is where most men get uncomfortable. They think this way of seeing people is cold, maybe even cynical. It's not. It's accurate. The same way understanding gravity isn't pessimistic, it's just reality. People act in their own interest, shaped by fear, desire, and social pressure. Ignore that, and you'll keep misreading situations. Accept it, and everything starts making sense. You'll notice who only reaches out when they need something. You'll see the subtle shift in someone's tone when they feel threatened. You'll recognize who respects strength and who only responds to status. Patterns start revealing themselves everywhere. And here's where it gets deeper. It's not just about reading who someone is now. It's about predicting who they become under pressure. When stakes rise, when options change, when consequences disappear, that's when people reveal their real nature. If you can see that in advance, you don't get blindsided. You know who to trust, who to keep at a distance, who to collaborate with, who to compete against. You move with intent instead of hope. And that changes everything. Because now your knowledge isn't passive, it's applied. It shapes your decisions, your interactions, your positioning in every environment. You waste less time, make fewer mistakes, invest your energy where it actually returns something. And something else happens too. You stop overvaluing people who don't deserve it, and you stop underestimating those who do. Your judgment sharpens. Your circle becomes tighter, more intentional. You don't need to dominate every room. You just need to understand it better than everyone else in it. And most of the time, that comes from saying less, watching more, and letting people reveal themselves while you stay composed. Because the man who sees clearly doesn't need to prove anything. He just moves differently. Number 7. There comes a moment when you realize most of your thoughts aren't even yours. They're reactions, shaped by fear of judgment, by the need to be accepted, by invisible pressure you've been carrying for years without noticing. And once you see that, it's hard to ignore, because now the question isn't, what do I think? It's who am I thinking for? Most men never answer that honestly. They adjust in real time. They soften what they say depending on who's listening, they hold back opinions to avoid tension, they shape their behavior around approval. Not consciously, but constantly. It's subtle. A glance, a reaction, a shift in tone, and they recalibrate. Over time, they lose something without realizing it. Clarity. I've watched men hesitate mid-sentence, almost like they caught themselves about to say something real, then immediately correct it, polish it, make it more acceptable, and everyone nods, conversation continues, nothing breaks. But something important just got buried. That's how it happens. Not through force, through conditioning. You learn that approval feels safe. And safety becomes a trap. Because the moment your thinking depends on how it will be received, it's no longer thinking. It's performance. You're not analyzing reality, you're managing perception. And that makes you easy to influence, easy to steer, easy to silence. That's the opposite of sovereignty. Mental sovereignty is when your thinking is no longer for sale. No approval, no validation, no social reward can buy it, and no pressure, no rejection, no discomfort can shut it down. You see something clearly and you stand on it, not aggressively, not emotionally, just firmly. Most people can't do that because they're attached to being liked, to being right, to being comfortable, and those attachments are leverage points. Anyone who understands that can move you without touching you just by pulling on those strings. Remove the strings, and suddenly you're not so easy to control. I remember a situation where a guy was clearly being disrespected in a group setting. Subtle at first, small remarks, dismissive tone, nothing overt. You could see it building, and instead of addressing it, he laughed along, adjusted himself, tried to fit back in. Why? Because the fear of social rejection outweighed his respect for himself. That's the cost. When you depend on approval, you tolerate things you shouldn't. But a sovereign mind operates differently. It doesn't react immediately. It observes, it assesses, and then it decides. Not based on emotion, not based on how others might feel, but based on reality. What's actually happening? What matters? What doesn't? And that creates a different kind of presence. You're not trying to be liked. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just stable, clear, unmoved. And people feel that. Some will respect it. Others will be uncomfortable around it. Both reactions tell you something. Because once you stop needing validation, you start seeing people as they are, not as you hope they'll be. Detachment sharpens perception. You notice manipulation attempts earlier. You recognize when someone is trying to guilt you, pressure you, frame you into a decision that benefits them. And instead of reacting, you step back. You don't get pulled in. You don't need to argue. You just don't engage on their terms. That's control. Not over others, over yourself. And that's rare. Most people are reactive. They're pulled by emotion, by impulse, by external pressure. Their mood changes based on how they're treated. Their decisions shift based on who's watching. Their beliefs adjust based on what's accepted. That's not freedom. That's dependency, disguised as normal behavior. When you develop sovereignty, that breaks. You decide what you believe based on evidence, not consensus. You choose how you respond based on intention, not emotion. You act based on strategy, not impulse. And once you operate like that consistently, something changes. You become difficult to move. People will test it. They'll challenge you, try to provoke you, try to make you doubt yourself, try to pull you back into old patterns. Let them, watch it happen. Stay still. Because the moment they realize they can't reach you through approval, fear, or pressure, they lose influence. And that's when you stop being part of the game. You start playing your own. Number 8. There's a stage most men never reach, not because it's impossible, but because it strips away too much. It removes the comfort, the illusions, the stories you've been leaning on your entire life. And when you cross into it, you don't feel smarter. You feel exposed, like someone turned the lights on in a room you didn't even realize you were trapped in. Because clarity doesn't feel good at first. It feels isolating. You start noticing things you used to ignore. Conversations that once felt normal now sound scripted, predictable, almost mechanical. People repeating ideas they never questioned, reacting in patterns you can see before they even speak. You begin to realize how much of human interaction is performance, calibrated responses, social masks, subtle negotiations for validation and status. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I remember sitting in a group once, listening to everyone talk, laughing at the right moments, agreeing where expected, and for the first time, it felt hollow. Not fake in an obvious way, but rehearsed. Like everyone was playing a role they didn't consciously choose, and I realized I had been doing the same thing for years. That's when it hits. You're not just observing others, you're confronting yourself. Because clarity doesn't just expose the world, it exposes you. Your past decisions, your blind spots, the times you ignored red flags because it was easier, the moments you chose comfort over truth. And that creates a kind of internal conflict most people avoid at all costs. So they stay where it's comfortable. They hold on to simplified narratives. Good people, bad people, things working out in the end. Effort always being rewarded. It feels better, cleaner, less demanding. But it's not real. Reality is layered. People act out of self-interest more often than they admit. Loyalty shifts under pressure. Respect isn't given, it's negotiated. And fairness is conditional at best. You start seeing that clearly, not as a theory, but in real interactions, real patterns, real outcomes. And that creates distance. Not because you think you're above anyone, but because you're no longer aligned with the same illusions. You'll watch people walk into situations you already understand the outcome of. You'll see the same mistakes repeat, the same dynamics unfold, the same cycles play out. And when you try to explain it, you'll sound negative, maybe even paranoid. But you're not. You're just not blind anymore. And that comes with a cost. You'll outgrow certain conversations. You'll lose patience for surface-level thinking. Some people will drift away, not because of conflict, but because you're no longer operating on the same level of awareness. Places that once felt familiar will start to feel off. And for a while, that gap feels heavy. But then something shifts. You stop expecting people to act differently than they are. You stop taking behavior personally. You see the patterns, understand the incentives, and instead of reacting emotionally, you adjust strategically. That's where peace starts to emerge. Not the soft, naive kind, but a controlled, grounded calm. You're no longer confused by contradictions, no longer frustrated by outcomes that don't match your expectations, because your expectations are now aligned with reality. You don't chase clarity anymore. You operate from it. And that changes how you move. You don't waste energy trying to fix people, convince them, or pull them into your perspective. You observe, you assess, and you decide where to invest your time, your attention, your presence. That's detachment. Not coldness, precision. You're still aware, still present, still capable of connection. But you're no longer entangled. You don't need things to be different for you to function. You work with what is. And that's where most men never arrive. Because to get there, you have to give up the comfort of not knowing. But once you do, you don't just see the game. You understand it. At some point you realize the pain isn't coming from reality. It's coming from the gap between reality and what you wish it was. That's where most men get stuck. They keep negotiating with the world like it's going to change its rules just because they feel strongly enough about it. They expect loyalty where there's no incentive for it, fairness where there's no structure to enforce it, respect without having established it, and then they wonder why they keep getting blindsided. That confusion, that frustration, it's not bad luck. It's misalignment. Because reality doesn't bend to preference. It doesn't reward intention. It responds to structure, incentives, timing. And once you see that clearly, something inside you shifts. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is actually happening here?" And that question alone pulls you out of emotional reaction and into control. I've seen men burn years chasing outcomes that were never available to them. Relationships built on imbalance, environments that drained them, goals that sounded right but were never theirs. They kept pushing harder, thinking effort would fix it, thinking persistence would force reality to cooperate. It never does. It just exposes the truth more brutally over time. And the longer you resist that truth, the more it costs you. The abyss teaches you to stop fighting what is, not in a passive way, in a precise way. You don't lower your standards, you refine your perception. You stop wasting energy on situations that have no return. You stop investing in people who show you, repeatedly, that they won't meet you halfway. You stop chasing outcomes that only exist in your head. Instead, you adjust. You look for leverage. You read the environment as it is, not as you want it to be, and you move accordingly, quietly, strategically. No drama, no wasted motion. And that's where a different kind of power starts to show up. Not loud, not performative, but controlled. Because now you're not reacting anymore. You're choosing. And yes, it comes with distance. You'll feel it. That separation between you and people who are still operating on assumptions, still expecting the world to be something it's not. Conversations will feel shallow. Patterns will feel obvious. You'll see outcomes before they happen. And sometimes, you'll say nothing, because you already know most people don't want clarity. They want comfort. That's the trade. But what you get in return is freedom. Not the kind people talk about, the real kind. The ability to move through situations without being emotionally hijacked, to see manipulation before it lands, to walk away without hesitation when something doesn't align. You're no longer trapped trying to fix things that were never yours to fix. You operate clean, and from there, you build something most men never reach, a mind that doesn't break. Not because you avoid pressure, but because you've trained yourself to face it without distortion. Rejection doesn't shake you, you analyze it. Failure doesn't define you, you extract from it. Betrayal doesn't destroy you, you adjust your model of people and move forward. That's the difference. You don't collapse under reality, you work with it. And once you reach that level, the world starts responding differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. You're no longer chasing validation, no longer reacting impulsively, no longer dependent on outcomes you can't control. You're stable, clear, intentional, and that makes you difficult to manipulate. Because manipulation requires emotional access, and you've closed that gap. From here, intelligence stops being something abstract. It becomes operational. You refine your attention, your perception, your decisions. Every day you either sharpen that edge or you let it dull. There's no neutral state. Most people drift. You don't. You build. Quietly, consistently, without needing recognition. Because at this point, you understand something most never will. Clarity isn't comfortable, but it's the only thing that actually works. And once you see that, you don't go back.